hell of a week in America. We got another mass shooting. We have people supporting the mass shooter. And then we have Donald Trump, who today just recently got indicted. A lot of things to talk about, y'all. And if you disagree, the phone lines are open today. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Welcome to Middle America. My name is Vincent. This is Middle America, as we've said, where we are not left wing, we are not right wing, we are just right. Yeah, guys, obviously, unless you were sitting under some sort of rock in some sort of planet that I've never heard of before, you've heard of this week's recent events. And they've been pretty bad. They've been pretty bad. Yes, I am up late. I am streaming up late. I was gonna hold off on reporting on the shooter until the manifesto came out. But there are individuals apparently who don't want the manifesto published. Now, why that would be, you can figure out for yourself, dear listener. So I'm not sure if the manifesto is even going to come out. But there's been enough vocalization from certain folks in that community that can help you connect the dots. But of course, until you look at the manifesto, there's always going to be the plausible deniability until that's confirmed, obviously. Another reason I didn't directly give my thoughts on the shooter is because I wanted to take time to actually collect my thoughts in a rational way. I'm not sure that the last 4 or 5 shooters have been from the trans community, but I'm definitely not going to ignore the fact that there's an obvious militant, violent strain in that community. And as I've been saying, and what I've been saying has not been very popular with anybody. But as I've been saying, that to me, this movement seems to be headed up by this movement is a particularly, especially at the activist level, a white biological male endeavor. And as I've been saying over and over again, unless you factor that in, then there's going to be obvious blind spots. When transgender people use terms like genocide and things of that nature, initially, I would just say this is ridiculous. This is hyperbole. And now I'm seeing that I probably made a mistake. I'm not sure that the architects of that particular meme out into the ether, I'm not certain that they were just doing it to be hyperbolic. Dear listener, if you are actually in the midst of being genocided, then any action that you take is justified self-defense. You know, Nat Turner, who is a folk hero among many sort of conscious black individuals, was a slave who, in his revolt against his oppressors, also killed children. And in a context like that, you can get away with wearing a Nat Turner shirt. There was recently a movie about Nat Turner a couple years ago. And the logic is, well, the child was also his slave master. And that child was going to grow up to continue the perpetuation of slavery and the lynching and systemic killing of black people. So this kid is fair game. Now, I don't believe that. You guys know where I'm at. I'm a radical pacifist because I believe that it's impossible to be a Christian and reconcile the New Testament with any sort of killing. However, many people would say, well, I mean, the dude was going up against the system. Okay. So using the term genocide, talking about transgenocide, has now been leveraged to justify this person killing these children. Dear listener, if you're part of the trans community, we got a lot of love for everybody. But the idea that you're being genocided is a lie. Dear trans person, you're not being genocided. You're not close to being genocided, and that is good news. Can you imagine Kristallnacht? Kristallnacht it's sort of a moment in history for the Jewish people. And Kristallnacht translates to Crystal Night, which is essentially all this broken glass from all these Jewish shops that were destroyed by the populace. And it was sort of like the real shot across the bow to where it was like, yo, they're really, really coming for us now. Can you imagine, dear listener, after Kristallnacht, if a bunch of Jewish people or a couple Jewish people or one Jewish person would have went into a German school and massacred German children and their teachers in school? Can you imagine what the president, namely the Führer of Germany, would have done? What kind of press release do you think would have happened after that? Do you think that the leader of the free world of Germany would post a hey Perkinos in the house, my brother Perkinos in the house? Hold on, guys, I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera. Surprise. Let me see if you guys can see me real quick. Here, let me add something here. Something wonky's happening with my camera. That's interesting. Very interesting. All right, let's try this. Let's try that. All right, so I'll be back. You can see me now. Hopefully, inshallah, you can see me. What's up, Facebook user? Type 22 if you can see me and you can hear me okay. I think I solved the problem. Okay. Yeah, guys. So can you imagine? Here. Not 2 days after this person went up and massacred a Christian school, which obviously Christians are not a protected class in America, but obviously that was a hate crime. That's obvious. I haven't read the thingy yet, but the people of Tennessee had decided that they don't want gender affirming care. Is that the euphemism? One group is calling it gender affirming care, another group is calling it mutilation. I keep hearing from certain folks like, hey man, there's no nobody's doing any of these like crazy surgeries on minors, which is not true because Chloe Cole was 15 when they took their breasts from her. But anyway, the terrible people in Tennessee decided that they don't believe that minors who can't get tattoos, they don't believe that minors should be able to have these radical surgeries or even have their bodies pumped full of chemicals. Now, if you're a grown individual, the whole my body, my choice thing applies as long as you're not using your body to end the life of another person. But as a parent, I can understand why the parents of Tennessee would not want their children to take part in any sort of, quote, gender affirming care from anybody. Unfortunately, a lot of trans individuals are interpreting that as hate and genocide. They're calling that hate and genocide. Dear listener, here, let me explain something to you. So let's say Kristallnacht happens, right? And the Jews go out there and massacre a bunch of Germans. Do you think that 2 days after that massacre, that Adolf Hitler would have posted this on the .gov, the Nazi.gov website? Here we go. Biden-Harris administration advances equality and visibility for transgender Americans. So this trans person goes up and lights up all these kids. And not even 2 or 3 days later, here comes the most powerful person in the world and the second most powerful person in the world saying, we should have we need to have equality and advancement and visibility for transgender people. Today, the Biden-Harris administration recognizes the Transgender Day of Visibility. Now, there's also a Transgender Day of Vengeance. Apparently. Huh. I wonder if we had a day of vengeance, since we're talking about keeping score for vengeance. I wonder if there are any other groups in America that should have a day of vengeance. And considering the vast majority of these folks who are calling for vengeance are white, so if you guys had your day of vengeance, do we get our day of vengeance next? And then what would happen to you? These are serious questions. But here we go. This person shoots up a school, and 48 hours later, you've got the most powerful people in the country talking about you need to have a day of visibility for transgender people. All I am saying is that is not the posture of a people who are undergoing genocide. Stop it. There's a reason that Harriet Tubman's little endeavor was called the Underground Railroad. Negroes in Georgia were not marching and hitting the streets saying, we're here, we're black, go queen. We weren't doing that. If you wanted to escape, you had to run and hide, because if the slave master caught you, he'd beat the hell out of you, rape you publicly, and then lynch you, cut off your penis and put it in your mouth so that your wife could get your dead body off a tree. That happened hundreds of times. This idea that trans people are facing genocide is a lie. You are not. Stop it. Stop it. But if you use the term genocide and you get privileged white people who've been coddled their entire life and given everything that they want on a societal level their entire life, and you finally say no to them. No, you can't go into this bathroom. No, you can't play on this team. People who have an assumption that the world belongs to them will interpret no as hate. But I got to tell you guys, no is not hate. And parents saying, no, I don't want my kid having any surgery before they're 18 years old, making life-changing decisions before they're 18 years old. I don't know if you guys saw the Jazz Jennings situation, where Jazz Jennings now says, I don't know who I am, blah, blah, blah. And their medical doctor said she would never be able to achieve orgasm, blah, 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 because of all the chemicals and shit they put in this child when she was 11, or he, whatever. So a lot of you folks in that community do not have children. This is the irony of this whole thing. You don't have children, so you don't know what it's like to be a parent. We know what it's like to be a child. We know what it's like to be young. We know what it's like to believe that, hell, when I was 16, I wanted a corn tattoo all like across my chest. To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I would be against the corn tattoo, and I'm not sure that I'm not eventually going to get one. But you get the point. Or let's try this. I wanted to tattoo my girlfriend across my chest, which would have been really awkward, considering, um, you know. So I just got to say, dear trans people, please stop with the genocide stuff. It's insulting to people who've actually been genocided. And secondly, where is the trans version of Tamir Rice? Because you understand the difference, right? Between a guy that you're interested in, you start fooling around with him and you don't tell him what you actually are, and then he finds out what you are and kills you. You see the difference between that and the police killing you on camera and then not being even indicted. You do see the difference between that, right? All of us are vulnerable to citizen on citizen violence. But when you have a group of people that have a license to kill, and that group of people was stood up initially for you, we had entire amendments, dear listener. You know the 13th Amendment that basically says slavery is outlawed unless a person gets arrested and put in prison, in which case we can re-enslave them. See Kamala Harris. See Kamala Harris and those people in California, the nonviolent offenders who the state was recommending that they release, and Kamala Harris and her team said, no, we can't release that because they're fighting fires at a discount level. These prisoners are these nonviolent offenders. This is Kamala Harris. This is why I got to disagree with my brother Minister Farrakhan, where Brother Minister Farrakhan makes it sound like there's something particularly wrong with white people. No, there's nothing particularly wrong with white people. It's just that when you combine human sinfulness with power, that's what you're going to get. And as soon as Miss Kamala Harris got some power, she went out and oppressed them black people just like her masters were doing. So don't hear me say that there's something particularly wrong with white people. Okay? Don't hear me say, let me just define terms real quick. When I say terms like white privilege, I do not mean that white people don't work hard for what they get. What I mean is the societal advantages that you have by being the unearned societal advantages that you have just inherent to being the majority in the most powerful nation ever known to man. If you're the majority group in the most powerful nation we've ever seen, then obviously you have certain unearned privileges, and obviously you were socialized a certain way. So please don't be offended, dear listener. White privilege is not about race even. It's about mathematics and human sinfulness. When you're the majority, you automatically have a power position that you did not earn on virtue of being the majority. Okay? So it doesn't mean that white people are bad. It doesn't mean they didn't earn what they worked for. It just means you have unearned privileges that you got for being part of that group of people. That's all it means. And unearned privileges does not equal you didn't earn what you got. That's not what that means. I believe, and a lot of people believe, that Barry Bonds should be a Hall of Famer. But Barry Bonds, he was already mega talented and worked very hard. But Barry Bonds, unfortunately, used performance-enhancing drugs, which gave him an unearned advantage over his peers. That doesn't mean that because he was shooting up, juicing up, that he didn't go to practice, that he didn't work out, that he wasn't at the batting cages till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He was still doing that shit. So saying that you have an unearned advantage does not mean that you didn't work for what you had, that you didn't sweat and all the rest of it. It just means you had an unearned advantages. Some of those advantages just happened because of nature. You were born to 2 Caucasian parents, etc. I have male privilege for the same reason. Males are in a dominant position in the society. So there's certain perks that I get for being a male that I did not earn. There's certain barriers that women have that are in front of them that I don't have because I'm a man. Okay, now how does this relate? Well, how it relates is if you are part of a group of people who've been privileged, I really need trans people to think this through. All the white privilege hit the Republicans and not you? No, you're not being genocided, trans people. Not even close. What's happening is, for the first time in your life, society as a whole, or in part, is saying no to you. And you don't understand how to operate that way, because you have always been part of a group of people where society has said yes, because in a democracy, the majority generally rules, and if the majority is white, then they're going to vote in your interests. So these are things that you probably didn't even understand was happening. But that's what's happening. When a person says, I'm not going to refer to you as your gender identity, that is them saying no to you. When a person, when biological women say, I don't want you in a space in the bathroom with me, they're saying no to you. They're not genociding you. They're not saying you need to die. They're just saying no to you. And when you try to influence my children by putting people in there that are overly sexualizing them, that have all types of pedophilic adjacent shit on their Twitter account, and when people say, no, we don't want you around our children, they're not hating you. That's not hate. That's not genocide. That's simply no. That's simply no. That's all that is. Dear listener, there is a real problem in this community. And it's got to get called out. You guys are saying that when people tell you no, that they're being hateful to you. I'm sorry, that's not true. They're not being hateful to you by saying no to you. So you guys have to figure out why you keep comparing yourself to the black struggle, to the Jewish struggle, where you keep using words like genocide and systemic oppression. Stop it. The 13th Amendment was drafted, and you had entire roving police forces drafted to re-enslave black people. You had entire sheriff's departments that had to get shut down because they were led by skinheads and Nazis. And no, they did not reopen all the arrest records of those individuals. Show me the police department that specifically is recruiting. I mean, the FBI literally came out and said they're infiltrating law enforcement as an act of warfare against black people. Show me that report about you guys, trans people. Show me the trans Tamir Rice, who gets blown away in less than a second, and the person that killed them is on paid leave and nothing happened to them. Show me the trans Philando Castile video. Show me the trans Eric Garner video. Stop it. You guys are the goodwill. See, here's the thing. Here's this thing. My rubric is always going to be, I'm going to defend the underdog. So if it's adult women and doctors versus a baby, I'm going to defend the baby. If it's gay people are 3 to 5% of the population, and I got a bunch of people passing laws to make it so gay people can't work, can't live without harassment, can't decide who has power of attorney in their dying moments, I'm going to go and advocate for the gay folks. But when it's children, impressionable young children, and I see grown men strutting their genitalia in front of children, the victims there are not the grown men who want access to children. The people that need to be defended in that situation are the children, not the grown men. It is not hateful to say that I do not want a pedo adjacent sick bastard around children. That's not hate. Once again, dear listener, that's simply no. You guys are calling things hate and genocide only because you're hearing the term no for the first time in your life at the cultural level. That's it. Dear listener, if you snap and go crazy and you kill a trans person on camera, that's the end of your life in the United States of America. These folks just shot up a bunch of people. This person just shot up a bunch of people, and the most powerful person in the world just came out and said, we need to have a trans day of visibility, which is extremely ironic. Now, I gotta say, the other thing that makes it very, very difficult to continue to be an advocate for this group of people is the fact that this group refuses to call themselves out. And unfortunately, it is now metastasized into something that maybe was in my face the entire time. I will admit that. I will admit maybe this was in my face the entire time. You know, every time I'd shoot something and I'd go after all this stuff, you know, I'd get a Christian that would come up to me and they'd say, you know, Vin, you know, you're not taking this and this and this into account. Blah 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 blah. Okay, I generally I will say to you, I just said, you transphobic prayer. I just completely ignored those people. You guys know how I get down. I'm not a fan of piling on to people who are already downtrodden. But the fact of the matter, dear listener, is, yeah, some people are legitimately downtrodden, and other people are just violent. Now, I'm going to show you guys a video, and this video was from, I forgot the name of this lady. I forgot. I don't know the name of this lady, but I think her name is KJK or something like that. And you guys will see what happened at this rally in Auckland, New Zealand. There was a rally in Auckland, New Zealand, and what's her name? Is it Kelly J. Keane? Was her name? The way these I mean, I don't know what you want to call it, but it was an extremely violent reaction in New Zealand. None of the major left-wing outlets actually reported on it, and it was extremely violent. Now, Michael Cooper's telling me, okay, Posey Parker. So I'm gonna get the Posey Parker video, and this woman is, I don't know. People call her a trans exclusionary radical feminist. Is that the term that that's supposed to be used when you're talking about women who say, listen, I have a serious problem with biological men in the bathroom with me. I have a serious problem with biological men competing with our daughters. That turns you into a trans exclusionary radical feminist, which Anna Kasparian has just figured out. A poor Anna. See, this is what I'm saying. It's very hard to advocate for this group of people because these people, again, do not operate like downtrodden minorities. They operate like privileged people. These people, unless you 100% agree with anything and everything that they say, you are phobic, you're not an ally, you always secretly hated trans people, yada, 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 yada. I had a very beautiful friend of mine tell me, Vin, you've now become transphobic, blah, 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 blah. I said, what have I said that's transphobic? What are you talking about? You're repeating talking points. I said, well, what talking points? You're saying that there's pedos, that we're groomers. I said, no, I've said a million times that that most of the trans people that I hung around with in Greenwich Village, you know, like ground zero for the trans community, like, you know, Greenwich Village in New York City. You guys read about the Stonewall riots, so you watch YouTube videos about Stonewall. I know where Stonewall is. I was in Greenwich Village. I was around them people before it was cool to be those people. I'm talking about like 20 years ago. I was out there. My nail polish and my trench coat and all that shit. A lot of you guys are Johnny come lately to this shit. But you know when you're young, you think everything is new. Now, y'all, the trans people have been around for a long time. And the community's been around for a long time. And I've said over and over again, my experience with the community is that they didn't want to be around kids because they had to edit themselves when kids were around. None of the trans people I knew about wanted to fucking be around kids, and they certainly didn't want to strut all their craziness in front of kids. So this is some new shit y'all doing.
The anti-transgender campaigner, Posey Parker, was drowned out by protesters when she tried to speak in Auckland today. A couple of thousand people opposed to her views shouted, "Go home," and one threw tomato sauce at her. Forced to leave the stage, she was bundled away by police. Nick Trubridge was there.
Again, this is not how oppressed people operate. Can you imagine, dear listener, a Nazi, an actual Nazi, showing up in in Germany and saying we need the Jews out of our country, and them getting mobbed by thousands of Jews and having to escape with a police escort, and then nothing happens to that village? This is, which person is in danger of being genocided in this picture? Who do you think? Who's terrified and in complete fear of their life in this picture? Genocided. Okay.
Chaos in the park. Differences of opinion descending into riotous scenes in downtown Auckland.
Well, no, this is not differences of opinion. This is this small little white lady saying something, actually expressing her opinion, and these are violent people who hate her, who don't respect her ability to speak freely, and don't respect her autonomy. What's fascinating to me is that biological men have found a way to tell biological women, shut the fuck up. And we can now ventilate all the inherent misogyny and violence that is in every single man, because as I said, I'm a Christian. I believe in human sinfulness. And what that means is I believe that all of us are probably born racist and probably born misogynist. I have no issue saying that because I am a sinner. And if you don't recognize the seeds of corruption in yourself, that's one of the reasons we're so big on blaming everybody else for everything. Because as long as the finger's pointed to other people, we get off scot-free. No, dear listener, I didn't start caring about women's issues until I had a daughter. So that doesn't make me less inherently misogynistic. Now I have skin in the game. And of course now I'm a lot more aware of it. And I'm a lot more focused on trying to eradicate that within myself. But make no mistake, it was because I have daughters. Now I've got developing daughters. So now I'm even more aware of rape culture and things of that nature because now I have skin in the game. Dear listener, a lot of trans women are misogynists. They hate women for being what they feel they should be. I'm sorry, that's a fact. There was a really weird comment on the Anna Kasparian thing, I'm not going to lie to you, where the person said, basically, you should be grateful that you have a uterus, and if you don't want to, give it to one of us. Now look, I am not saying this is true of every single trans person. I'm talking about this form of transgenderism. This, the radical, violent, you must completely bow to what we say, otherwise, look, here you go, no TERFs, no TERFs. What does that mean, no TERFs? What does that mean? And what is being a TERF? A TERF is any feminist woman in the 60s. Please listen to me again. Please tell me which feminist in the 60s would be cool with a dude imposing themselves in women's spaces. I'm talking about a biological dude. Which 60s feminist would genuflect to that bullshit? So they were all TERFs. All right.
Posey Parker didn't get a lot of speaking at her Let Women Speak event. Difficult to do that when you're met with this.
Look at all the dudes. Look. See, look at all the dudes. Look at all the dudes here. Being trans isn't a choice. Being transphobic is. No, it's not. See, here's the thing. If you, all white dudes, correct. All white dudes, correct. Dear listener, if a phobia is a medically diagnosed condition, okay? Go read the DSM. I think where I still have the DSM-5, okay? That's basically the Bible of pathologies. Dear listener, if somebody really has a phobia, that is not a choice. That is a disorder. You guys adopted the term phobia. It really started with the gay community. You guys adopted the term phobia. So we're using your lexicon. Dear listener, if somebody has a genuine phobia, they did not choose that. That is a psychological condition, just like gender dysphoria. So, this is not true. We continue.
Initially, there was plenty of support for the British anti-trans activist.
Well, I've come to support women.
Here we go. Michael Knowles goes on stage and says that he wants to eradicate transgenderism in every aspect of public life, and people are surprised that trans people are buying guns. No, I'm not surprised that trans people are buying guns, considering the current situation that we're in. But Andrew, you should represent your interlocutors fairly. Michael Knowles did not say he was going to eradicate transgender people. He said gender ideology. He doesn't agree with it, so he wants to eradicate that ideology from public life. Okay? That's what he said. So quote him properly. Now, I understand why trans people would buy weapons. Your normal trans person would buy weapons. Because if I genuinely felt that I was being genocided, I probably would too. Here's the problem. You're not being genocided, though. You're actually very privileged. We continue.
And the protection of women's safe spaces.
Okay, now here's this hateful turf. Notice what she says. Notice what she said. Truth is not hate speech. 99% of shooters are white and cis. I want to eradicate Christianity from straightness from all aspects of public life. Tell me you wouldn't think that was genocidal language. Again, Andrew, that's not what he said. And there are lots of LGBT people that say they want to eradicate Christian ideals from public life. I can get you those quotes. There's lots of LGBT people that want to eradicate Christianity from public life. I don't know if you've seen the reaction from a lot of the people in the LGBT community to the death of these Christian children. It's stuff like, well, they were going to grow up to be big Republicans anyway. They were going to grow up to be oppressors, etc., etc., etc. So please miss me with this idea that there's just poor transgender people and they're just trying to live. And it's just pixie dust and stars everywhere. And they're trying to live. And here comes Michael Knowles. All 120 pounds of him talking about he's going to eradicate. Stop it. This is not the face of a bunch of victims. This is the face of a largely white male populace imposing themselves onto women. And now women are having to defend themselves. We continue. Here we go.
Park. Differences of opinion descending into riotous scenes in downtown Auckland. Posey Parker didn't get a lot of speaking at her Let Women Speak event. Difficult to do that when you're met with this. Initially, there was plenty of support for the British anti-trans activist.
Well, I've come to support women and the protection of women's safe spaces, to put it simply.
So my darling granddaughters can have their space in changing rooms and toilets like we used to have.
Okay, so here's this old little white lady and saying, listen, we want women to have toilets. And be able to go to the bathroom without worrying that there's a biological dude. And look.
But this stop on Parker's tour was doomed before.
Look who's screaming and yelling at her.
Space in changing rooms and toilets like we used to have.
But this...
Go home! Bunch of dudes in her face. Go home! See, this is the thing I'm starting to realize. It's the same thing that happened in the GameStop situation, right? When the person kept calling him a dude because he was like 6'5" and he just decided that he was going to transition like 2 days before. So he's wearing a dress, but he's clearly a dude. And this dude starts wrecking shop. See, you have that gear. You have that gear. Biological women don't have that gear. They can't like default back to, you know what? If somebody has a problem with it, I'm just going to get extremely violent. Biological women don't have that gear. Why? Because biologically they're not constituted for it, and they were not socialized that way. Who's doing all the screaming? Yeah, call in. Call in, Andrew. Call in. So, this is the problem. You got a bunch of dudes yelling at this little old lady, and all she's saying is something that everybody would have agreed with 10 years ago.
Stop on Parker's tour was doomed before it started. As she arrived, so did the masses and the noise.
Well, Posey Parker is due to start speaking here at 11 a.m, but there's not much chance of her being heard. The noise here is unbelievable. They've already had what looked like projectiles thrown at them. It'll be interesting to see whether they can get started. For now, not much of a chance.
Suddenly, it was all on. Barriers broken. Albert Park's rotunda was stormed. The Brit herself in the firing.
They broke down the barriers and they stormed her. Again, this is not how women act. I'm sorry, this is not how women act. This is how dudes act when they're very angry. When was the last time we saw barriers get torn down and people go in past the overwhelmed police? That's right, January 6th. And who was at the forefront of that? A bunch of white dudes. Isn't that true? Okay. All right.
Line, tomato sauce bombed by someone disguised as a supporter. Eventually, she was forced out, ushered through.
Okay.
Sauce bombed by someone disguised as a supporter. Eventually, she was forced out, ushered through crowds and into a waiting police car. The state may have granted Parker entry, but trans rights protesters had other ideas.
Can I ask why you've come here today?
Because I'm a good person. Because I'm a good person.
To protect my trans brothers and sisters from people like this. Get out of New Zealand with these people.
Okay, so this is the mentality to protect. Who needed the who needed the police escort, dear listener? This is what I'm talking. This is the upside down world. This is what happens when people of privilege are finally told no. All she's talking about is protecting her friends from the word no. She's talking about protecting her friends. You see that sleigh back there? I don't know what the sleigh means, but we'll talk about what sleigh means. She's out there trying to protect her friends. She's out there trying to protect her friends from this little old white lady who needed a police escort to escape with her life.
Belong here. Trans people belong everywhere. Fascists don't.
Fascist. Again, this is this ridiculous hyperbolic language that I initially mistakenly just said, that's just rhetoric. No, it's not. Because if they're an actual fascist, then anything you do to them is justified. So if you try to come here and use terms like fascist and genocide, I'm going to call you on it. I'm not going to allow this lying anymore. We continue.
Even after one side was driven out, tension continued to boil over.
Posey Parker has left the venue. She was ushered out of here soon after she attempted to start talking, but minutes after she's left, these clashes are still happening in the vicinity of Albert Park.
Parker's supporters still spreading.
And again, you hear the vast majority of the go home is from angry white dudes. Unbelievable.
Because I believe that woman is woman. That the biological woman has a right to defend her inherent rights.
As trans rights protesters assembled down the road, this time taking their message to a nearby rally for Hannah Tamaki's Vision NZ party.
Look.
The rolling mall made its way down Queen Street to the waterfront, then turned back, and in doing so, the two opposing groups briefly confronted one another before dispersing. A clash of ideas spilling out onto Auckland streets.
I got a hard time with the trans women are women, except for when y'all get pissed off And then you go into the bag and it's different. You got that gear. Biological women don't have that gear. That's the irony of all these like protests and counter protests. You're demonstrating, you're literally belying your base presupposition that you want us to believe. You literally, and this group is lacking in so much self-awareness that they don't understand what's actually happening. They have no idea what they're doing. And of course, no major trans outlet came out and repudiated this thing. You saw what all them black folks did when Kyrie and Kanye said what they said. It was the black folks that were more vocal than anybody decrying Kanye. That's how oppressed people respond. That's how oppressed people respond. They say, whoa, 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 it wasn't us, it wasn't us, it wasn't us. It was just that guy. It was him, Mouse. It wasn't me. It was him. See, now all the black folks cooned out when Kyrie and Kanye did all that shit. Okay? But here you go. You got folks out here really trying to convince us that trans people are oppressed and they're being genocided. That's not how oppressed people function. Oppressed people don't function that way. People under the threat of genocide do not function that way. I promise you. When there was one of these giant, them giant marches that Hitler had and everything, and everybody's doing the Sieg Heil thing, I promise you, there were no Jewish counter-protesters throwing bottles and shit and threatening the Germans when that was going on. Stop with the lying. Here's another. Somebody sent me another video. Okay, I'm gonna check this out. I'll check it out.
Parker drenched in tomato sauce. Her Let Women Speak event swamped by thousands who claim.
Here's the irony. Let women speak. Let women speak. Look at this.
By thousands.
This is I'm assuming a trans woman going toe to toe with this bodyguard. he's got a all right.
Who claim she's anti-transgender rights.
Go home.
She abandoned.
Look at this. Look at this. She's got this shit is incredible. They got their hands on this woman's throat. They got their hands at this woman's throat. I don't know what's at her neck.
Leaving under police.
I don't know what's at her neck, but they literally had their hands around this woman's throat. Whoo!
Escort earlier.
Whoo! Man.
She told her live stream she was scared.
I've genuinely never felt so unsafe in my life, ever.
After Nazis attended her Melbourne rally and police removed Independent Senator Lydia Thorpe from her Canberra event, New Zealand trans rights activists failed to stop her entering the country in the courts. So instead, they stopped her Auckland speech.
Get out of New Zealand with these people. They don't belong here. Trans people belong everywhere. Fascists don't.
Parker blamed a local journalist for all this.
You told everyone I was a Nazi, you lying piece of shit!
Her supporters insist she's not a Nazi.
I've come to support.
It does. See, here's the thing, dear listener. Here's the thing. If a person promotes white supremacist ideology, they're allowed to speak in the public square. I've said this a million times. The way to overcome this ideology is to simply destroy it in the public sphere. Furthermore, if you're on the left, you have to decide which Nazis are you against and which Nazis are you for. Because all of y'all were you guys were celebrating sending $140 billion to actual Nazis who actually have put bodies on the floor, including Ukrainians. Rest in peace, Dennis Kyrie. So this whole Nazi, fascist, you guys can never ever say that again to any rational person. You supported all the Ukraine bullshit. You can't. I'm sorry. You can't. You can't talk about fascism. Your boy Zelensky, in my view, at the behests of the Nazis, he literally unseated opposition parties and parties that are going for peace between Russia and Ukraine. He literally nationalized the media. So people want to say, well, not fascism is about what's happening on the right. I don't care what you call it. It's authoritarianism and it's non-different. And that's an actual fascist Nazi regime over there. And you guys supported sending $140 billion. So miss me with this, oh, this woman deserved this because they were supposedly Nazis. I don't want to hear it. Ridiculous. It's the same thing that Trudeau tried to do to those poor truckers over there in Canada. So there's one Nazi flag there. Now the entire thing is Nazis. We're supposed to ignore it. Stop it! You guys are killing me. You guys are killing me. Yes, they had a Let Women Speak march in Australia, and it was hijacked by a white supremacy group in Australia. She openly condemned the Nazis that hijacked the protest. Of course, I'm sure she did. But this is what these people do. You pin the term Nazi on it, that way you can treat people however you want. You can violate their right to free speech. You can attack them. You can punch them. This is why I was completely against the whole punch the Nazi thing. Forget all that. Because you guys are not demonstrating. I'm specifically talking about the radical trans left here, specifically. And just the radical left in the first place. You guys have demonstrated that you have absolutely no integrity or knowledge when it comes to actual Nazism. You called Donald Trump a Nazi for 4 years, and then you celebrated sending billions of dollars to actual Nazis. Stop it. You have no credibility with that term anymore outside of your little echo chamber, I promise you. I promise you. You would have no you have no credibility to anybody with a brain and a memory talking about Nazis. Secondly, again, you saw that man's hands around that woman's throat? Did you see that man's hands around that woman's... I'm sorry, that woman's hands around that woman's throat, I guess? Dear listener, did you see these fools kicking down barriers, all types of shit? Is that how women function? Do you guys remember what the largest rally in American history was? It was the Women's Day protest. There's like 1 million women flooding the Capitol or whatever it was. How many people ended up in the hospital in that protest? How many barriers were destroyed? How much property was ruined? You know what them girls did? When that happened, I was outside of Planned Parenthood fighting for babies with my words. It was, again, it was a leftist who was spitting on us, attacking us, putting hands on us, threatening to murder us, all types of shit in front of our children. So I saw this girl walking around with so one of the women, because it was actually a women-led thing. I was Johnny Come Lately. One of the women came up to me. She said, Vincent, she was an old school Christian. So she's like, I'm very sorry, brother. I got to tell you this, but I need you to be prepared. I said, what's going on, Mom? She said, shout out to Donna. She said, beautiful story. Multiple abortions, all types of shit. Met Jesus, completely changed her life. Fighting for babies now. Unbelievable story. But she said, brother, I thought there was a bomb threat, because there's always a threat. People used to pull me aside and warn me. They're like, hey, you got a credible threat here, blah, blah, blah. People know who you are, yada, 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 And a couple of guys from the church strapped up. I didn't strap, I'm not, like I said, I'm trying to apply the pacifism thing, right? So I'm thinking she's going to tell me there was another credible threat against, our lives or whatever. She comes to me, she says, now you're going to notice some strange hats. She says, it's because they're protesting. And I said, okay. I said, so what's with the hats? I turn around and there's this girl in a pussy hat, right? So I'm like, what the fuck? I said, what's that? She says, it is what you think it is, brother. And then she like walked off. My point is, when a bunch of women got together, actual biological women, when they actually got together, you had 1 million of them in pussy hats. Nobody got murdered. Nobody put hands around their throats. anybody's throat. None of the women destroyed any property. They got up there and said, I'm a nasty woman, all that shit. It's like, yeah, I know. I knew you were a nasty woman from the beginning. You didn't have to say. But that's the worst that they did. The worst when a bunch of women got together and they were mad as hell because the whole Trump situation, the worst that they could sum up was pussy hats. Why? Because women in America are not socialized to react violently when people say no to them. That's why. Women in America are socialized that their sexuality is their highest power. So when they all get together, what do? They all show up with pussy hats. They don't destroy property. They don't go crazy because, one, biologically speaking, women aren't attuned to that as their first response. And secondly, they weren't socialized that way. So y'all want us to say trans women are women, but then when you're tested and you're treated to a degree the way women have had to be treated in this country since the beginning, you guys say we can always fall back on violence. You have no idea how that looks to an outsider, dear listener. That's the problem. Now listen, if somebody wants to call me transphobic, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem at all. You can call in. I'll put the link. If anybody wants to call in, only if you disagree. Only if you disagree. If you disagree with me and you think I'm going on a transphobic rant, here's the thing. You can call in, click that number free of charge. There's no cost. Go right there and do that. So call in. Shout out to Ryan. Unless there's evidence Trump directed Cohen to cook the books to protect the campaign, he'll walk. Does anyone believe Trump itemizes his legal expenses? Of course not. Cohen had a standing order to fix issues and not bother Trump. This case is feeble. Well, I hope it's feeble for the sake of the country. A conviction of Donald Trump would almost certainly, especially considering what happened a couple days ago, you got a bunch of people on the right itching for some get back. So I hope to God that this thing just fizzles out and it's a political stunt. If it is a political stunt, it's a fucking horrible miscalculation and will probably guarantee another Trump election. It's unbelievable to me that anybody would celebrate this considering the weekend we've had. But again, you got people that are so ate up with hatred for Trump that they love their country less than they hate Trump. Their hatred for Trump is higher than their love for this country. Because if this actually happens and he gets indicted and convicted, people are going to die at the hands of their own countrymen. We all know that. So I don't know why anybody would celebrate that. Vin, remember what I told you about Anwar al-Awlaki? Yes. Is Hillary going to get arrested? No, she's not. And she's way more crooked than Trump is. We all know that. But she's not going to get arrested because the fact of the matter is the Biden DOJ, the Biden administration, and the Obama administration have used the DOJ as a weapon against their political adversaries, namely Trump. But of course, my friends on the left aren't going to see this because fascism is only a right-wing thing. When left people do it, it's okay because it's people we don't like. Ridiculous. Suffragettes attacked dudes with hammers back in the day. Okay, well, get us that data, Chris. They did not do it like this. These are dudes that are angry. They're breaking down barriers, doing all types of shit. And by the way, a suffragette would use a hammer because she knows she's inherently weaker than a man. But I want to call you on that. Tell me about these suffragettes. Like, is thousands of suffragettes were doing this, or like across the world, or one suffragette at one point went after somebody with a hammer? Let's see. Here's Chris. I mean, good, shout out to Chris. Shout out to Chris. Let's see. Suffragettes Hammer. I'm going to Google suffragettes and hammer. I'm not going to ask you to send me the documentation because I know that you're not going to have the thing on you. Here we go. Manchester Evening News. The hammer-wielding suffragettes who attacked an art gallery 108 years ago today. Oh, here it is. Oh, Chris. Google is not your friend, Chris. Jeez, crow. Okay, so I was making the case. This is not female behavior to go and violently attack people, especially people for just for speaking. Chris says suffragettes took hammers. Suffragettes attacked dudes with hammers back in the day. I said, okay, I got to call you on that. When did that happen? Okay, so here's the report. La ilaha illallah. It's Ramadan, Chris. It's Ramadan. You out here lying. The hammer-wielding suffragettes who attacked 13 paintings in a Manchester art gallery 108 years ago. They didn't attack dudes with hammers, my brother. They attacked 13 paintings. Good God. Help us, Lord. So Chris just proves my point. When women who are actually being oppressed, you're not allowed to vote. Literally not allowed to vote. So you're not able in a democracy, any sort of self-determination. Has anyone banned trans people from voting? No. As I said, not 48 hours after a trans person went and massacred a bunch of innocent people, and they're all in Jannat al-Firdaus, inshallah. Not 48 hours later, the President of the United States issues a press release talking about trans visibility. So forget genocide. You guys aren't even where the suffragettes were. And so we looked at it. We looked for it. Now here's Chris. Keep looking. Hell no, I'm not going to keep looking. You made a statement. You need to get it to us to back it up. Here's what we have. God, you guys are killing. This is like the hardest group on the planet to advocate for. Honestly. It's absolutely amazing. No Chris. No. The suffragettes were attacked by men. I can believe that. I mean, I'll check that out. But what happened is the suffragettes use hammers on paintings. Why? Because again, women are not naturally disposed to inflict violence onto people. They're not naturally disposed toward violence, Chris. They're just not. And they haven't been socialized to commit violent acts on people. They did not take hammers to dudes, Chris. They took hammers to artwork. And it was 13 of them. Let me see. It wasn't 13 of them. It was 4 of them. I'm sorry. Around 4:30 a.m. on the night of February 19th. 4:30 in the morning. Those girls made sure that there were no people around. Who's in an art gallery at 4:30 in the morning? Unbelievable. And this is what happens. Like you explain something, and then here we go. So look, man, Chris, this is not the way you advocate for a marginalized group of people. And this is not the way that marginalized people act. What those girls did in the art gallery 100 fucking years ago is how marginalized people act when they're protesting. They wait, so they get little resistance. It's 4:30 in the morning. They had no intention of actively hammering people in the head. God almighty. Why? I Look at News just came up with a brilliant point. I'm holding the we letting off today. Why do you have to look so far back to find this women violence? Can't you point to something more recent? Correct. You got to go fucking 113 years into the past to talk about this hammer shit, and it was literally an art gallery, Chris, at 4:30 in the fucking morning. But why do you have to go so far back? I mean, we just overturned Roe v. Wade. The most violent thing that women did in response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade was Anna Kasparian throwing her pen across the table. Now, if you think about all the rhetoric, oh my God, my body, my choice, this is a second form of violation, blah, you're stripping us of our rights, yada, yada, yada. If anybody could turn that rhetoric into direct action to hurt people, it could have been women. Women took to the streets. They screamed, they yelled, they cried. They did not break down barriers, destroy property, and put their fucking hands around people's throats, Chris. That was a real, actual quote right that they lost. Now, you guys know my position on that. Nobody has a right to kill an innocent person. But this was a right and a settled law. And then when you consider it was Trump who elected all these people into the Supreme Court, when you consider the Merrick Garland situation with Obama, there was a lot of shit that if you were on the left, you could be genuinely angry about. Not a single one of them went violent, Chris. Because women are biologically and sociologically not violent. So when I see these women yelling with all that bass in their voice, towering over this person because you cannot outdo biology, intimidating her with their hands around her throat, as a man, my instinct is to protect her. And I know a lot of dudes who are furious at that video, seeing that woman surrounded by all that testosterone. So, look, you guys got a problem in your community. And I got to tell you, Chris, your response is indicative of the problem in the community. It's justify, lie. Do everything you possibly can to make those people constantly the victims and constantly justify their actions. And what you guys don't realize is that everybody else who normally has goodwill, you are losing out on a bunch of goodwill by doing this shit. All right, I finally have a guest. Who am I talking to?
Everybody else who
You gotta mute me, homeboy.
Out on a bunch of goodwill by doing shit. All right, I finally have a guest. Who am I talking to?
This will be Ernie.
Okay, Ernie, you gotta mute me, bro.
Mute you?
Yeah, you gotta mute me because I'm hearing you in the background there. Okay, can you hear me now? Well, you muted yourself now. Ernie, you just muted yourself, buddy. So you gotta mute me and unmute yourself.
My bad.
No, you're good.
Yourself now.
We're good now?
Yep.
Ernie, you just muted yourself, buddy.
Well, no, because I'm hearing an echo of me. All right, go ahead.
All right, hold on. Okay.
What do you got?
Are we good now?
Yep, we're good now.
Okay. I had my TV on. My bad. I was just gonna say that you know that the whole Nashville shooting was staged, right?
Oh man, Ernie, I gotta tell you, are you in Nashville?
Okay, listen, I have a bunch of facts. Okay, number one, when this supposed shooter...
Ernie, I gotta stop you right there. Ernie, listen, bro. I'm not saying that you're crazy. Here's the thing. I haven't done any research on the validity or lack thereof of the shooter, and so I can't speak intelligently to what you're saying, right? So the call-in line really is about people who disagree. Now, if I do a show on whether or not the Nashville shooter actually happened, I'll definitely have you on so that you can put out that perspective. But I haven't done any research on the validity or lack thereof of the shooting, so I can't comment on it either way.
Okay, so I can't state a couple facts.
Well, I don't know if they're facts, right? So, Ernie, be in my position. Let's say that you're completely wrong, right? And the shooting actually happened. So now I'm in a platform where I am denying real, authentic pain and suffering of actual human beings. I'm sure you'd agree with me, but if that was the case, that I shouldn't do that, right?
Okay. I see where you're coming from, but can
we agree on that? You'd agree with me that if those people actually died, and then I put you on a platform and you denied that those people actually died, that would be horrible and irresponsible of me to do. I'm not saying anything about your character. This is just about my character.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I respect that, but what I'm saying though is
Okay,
like
so you got to respect that. You got to respect. If you truly respect it, then you got to drop that topic, bro. You can't. Can't say you respect it and then just go off and do it anyway, right? That doesn't work.
Well, I mean, you're talking about this whole transgender thing, and it's kind of ironic that this happened with a transgender person, and I just because you are the person that like. I guess you could, vent this kind of frustration to. It was like, because everybody I talk to, they think I'm nutso, but it's like I send you links.
I don't think you're nutso. This has nothing to do with you. This is about me. This is about me and my standards of journalistic integrity and things of that nature.
Okay, so I can't state the things that happen.
I mean, you're free to you have your own platform. I'm sure you have your own YouTube channel. You can go for it over there. It's just not something I'm going to engage in directly because you know how I get down. I don't talk about situations unless I have actual facts. I never talk about something on my platform unless I have data and things that I can show folks, right? So what I'm telling you is, wait, Ernie, what I'm telling you is I haven't done any research on that, and so to be wrong on that, like. It'd be if we were arguing about LeBron James or Michael Jordan, there's no like existential consequence of being wrong on that, right? But if you're wrong on this, there are massive real world consequences to that. So I have to be completely buttoned up on that kind of a topic to engage with it. And you said you respected that, and I'm just going to take in good faith that you respect me as a man. So let's move on to something else. Do you have anything else to bring up?
Well, I did leave a link on your Facebook channel, so I hope you would just look at that and see what you think.
Okay,
that's all I'm saying.
Inshallah, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to do that because I'm a very, very busy man. But if I have the time and inclination to do it, I'll check it out and I'll get back to you. How's that?
Yeah, fair enough, man. I really I just wanted because I thought when I got on this stream, I thought you like you were starting off with like the national thing and the whole thing, like the if you want to get into it right quick, well, the whole national thing, obviously we're not talking about that because it's like I do have facts, about that whole thing, but the whole transgender thing to me, it just like literally like Holly Holmes. I don't know if you saw the clip of Holly Holmes, UFC when she won. She literally said, like, we have to stop sexualizing kids.
Yeah.
Leave the kids alone. And I was like, that's awesome. She's like, I have a platform here. I'm gonna say that, and I agree. It's like, what is wrong with this administration or this, or I don't know, dare to say this country? What is wrong with the whole like child-friendly transgender shows and all the sexualizing children?
Well, yeah. So a couple things, right? Like, to be completely accurate, it is drag shows. Now, obviously, there is some overlap ideologically and aesthetically between drag queens and trans people, but to be completely like right at the bullseye, it's a drag queen story hour. I agree with you that the inherent desire to want to be around children by grown men and women who are not in the teaching, by grown men, to be honest with you, who are not part of the teaching profession, automatically makes me suspect of anyone. Second to that is I have definitive, it's in video as well as from the mouth of some of these folks that there are clear abuses of children happening on camera. I just saw another one where you had this trans person like lap dancing, putting their ass in the face of a 10th grader. That's still a minor. Yeah. That is actual abuse. And in any other circumstance, if it was a heterosexual situation, that person would be in prison. But because this person is supposedly a drag queen, we're supposed to let that go. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, but did you see that one drag show where it was like I don't know, what do you want to call it? They came out and they had like fake breasts and like they're simulating like sex, and in front of children. It's like, dude, see. And then we have our wonderful president smelling children and come on, man.
Yep. And also
like,
credibly accused of sexual assault, and that was pretty much the end of the Me Too movement, right? Like the left doesn't realize that they're sacrificing all their integrity by on the one hand doing Me Too and then killing. They're the ones that killed the Me Too movement with Biden, and then on the one hand calling Trump a Nazi and then giving full-throated support to actual Nazis across the planet. So yeah, okay, I agree.
I got two things to say. Two questions, I guess. Do you think that like being trans is a mental illness? Like, do you think a guy that wants to be a woman wants to be a guy, it's kind of mental illness?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, I struggle with mental illness. I have told everybody. I did a 6-month stint in a psych ward when I was 17, 18 years old. So I'm trying to answer your question. I do my best to destigmatize mental illness. I think that both sides, the trans side as well as the anti-trans side, have an inherent bias against mental illness. So if you were to say, yeah, this is a form of mental illness, they get insulted, and that tells me how you feel about people with mental illness. So that's the first thing. I think, I've been diagnosed with major depression, chronic insomnia, blah, 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 blah. So, and I've been out about that from the very beginning because I want to do my best to destigmatize mental illness. Okay, now the second plank is, the fact of the matter is that if you go to the DSM-5, the people that we're calling transgendered are originally people that suffer from a phenomenon called gender dysphoria. Now, there is another phenomenon called autogynephilia and things of that nature. I'm not even going to talk about that, but there's an actual term to it, and it's called gender dysphoria. When you talk about transgenderism, that is the reaction to gender dysphoria. So transgenderism is a reaction to an actual condition, okay? Now, prior to recently, the recommendation in the DSM for dealing with gender dysphoria was to walk a person through it, let them know they're not, yada, yada, yada. And then that recently changed to, well, let's just go and affirm them in this, okay? So if you ask me, is it a mental illness? I would say it is a diagnosable condition that causes distress. That's just a fact. As a matter of fact, all my trans friends say they actually have gender dysphoria. And there's even debates among trans people about who really is trans. If you're not dysphoric, you're not really trans. Like, I've watched those debates happen with that group of people. So what I would say is, and they've said this in public. They say gender is what happens between your ears and biology is what happens between your legs. And so, yeah, obviously it is a diagnosable mental health condition. And really what's happened, there is no debate about whether or not it's a mental health condition. The debate is, how do you address it? That's where the debate is. But that it is a mental issue that's diagnosed is not a debate. That's a fact. I mean, it's in the DSM. It's a fact. It's a condition, just like major depression or bipolar disorder or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's how I'd answer that question.
So do you think that somebody that is accused of like murder, mass murder, and they're like, oh, I'm just clinic saying I had people talking in my head, so I was like, oh, they have a mental disorder, so are they excusing them? Like, oh, I have 15 personalities,
I think that's a difficult question. In Batman, you've got Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. I ask my friends all the time, was Adolf Hitler in his right mind? I think Adolf Hitler was obviously insane. That doesn't mean that he can't be held to account for the shit that he's done. I said, I had multiple diagnoses of mental illness, and I've done some terrible shit being in the Bronx and things of that nature. And I got to tell you, I can't ultimately put my mental illness as the reason I did that shit. I made decisions. Okay. I did things. I have family members that also have, a constellation of diagnoses that never did the shit that I did. I did that stuff. And that's one of the things that, you know, God had to deal with me when I was at the psych ward was, dude, you've done a lot of bad shit to people yourself, and you got to take accountability for that. Yeah, you had mental illness and things like that, and does it put you behind the 8 ball? Absolutely. But me, I'm a big accountability person. I find for me that taking accountability for your actions gives you a lot of power. Defaulting to your mental illness to explain or excuse away everything, to me, it might give you comfort, but it disempowers you. And so I always want to empower people. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm talking over you.
It's kind of like looking in the mirror kind of situation type deal, right? It's like you got kind of like you got to look in the mirror, like and then you get all this, like, you know, this knowledge from other people. You got, like, you know what? This is not me anymore. You know, I got to change. You know, either you want to find religion, or you want to find something. You know, whatever it may be. You want to take that illness, and you want to play sports, or you just want to be a painter, or be a musician, whatever whatever the case may be. Yeah, but I agree, man. It's like, I just wish we could have talked about this Nashville deal, but I respect that, obviously, because I could tell you stuff, then you could tell me stuff, but it's like, I don't want to have a one-sided conversation, because I just want you to watch the link that I send you. It's in the chat, but I post it on your Facebook and see what you think.
Yeah, if I check it out, I'll circle back with you for sure, my guy. For sure.
All right, man. All right.
I appreciate your contribution. Thank you so much, my guy. That was Ernie Eastman, everybody. Thanks, bro. I appreciate you.
I have a blessed night, man.
You too, bro.
All right.
For sure. Peace out. Ernie Eastman, ladies and gents. One of the greatest to ever do it. Thanks for the contribution. Yeah, guys, if you want to call in and have the debate or the discussion, let me know. My premise is that transgender people are not in danger in any way, shape, or form of genocide, and that as I've been saying, this is a largely white male endeavor, and what they're calling hate is simply no. And when privileged people who have gotten the world handed to them finally hear no at a societal level, they are experiencing it as hate, but it's not actually hate. That's my main thesis. That's just where I'm at. And now I'm going to start reading. This is another reason it's very, very difficult to advocate for these folks. Here's the Trans Resistance Network in their commentary about the shooter. The Trans Resistance Network has been notified that the shooter involved in today's church school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee was a person identifying as transgender, known from online profiles as Aiden or Aubrey Hale, he, him. While it's not our policy to engage publicly with news media, we believe this moment calls for a thoughtful response from our collective. So far, so good. We point out that today's incident in Nashville, Tennessee is not one tragedy, but two. So far, so good. The first tragedy today is the loss of the life of 3 children and adults. We extend our deepest sympathies and heartfelt prayers to those families dealing with the loss of loved ones. There is nothing we can offer them that will comfort them, the hurt, or ease the sorrow. We mourn with you. The second and more complex tragedy is that Aiden or Aubrey Hale, who felt he had no other effective way to be seen than to lash out by taking the life of others and by consequence himself. Dear listener, it's my left-wing friends who pointed out that if a black person goes off and shoots someone, he's a criminal and he's a thug. But when a white person goes and shoots someone, well, we have to look at the other factors. It was the left. It's the left that created those memes. You guys remember those memes? Every time a black person shoots somebody, he's a thug and a criminal. A white person does it. We need to look at their mental health. So what's happening here? What's happening here? Oh, this person did this because they had no other recourse. It's literally the same playbook as the racist white Republicans do every single time that a white mass shooter goes and does something. You guys are literally doing the exact same thing here. It's bad, but let's look at all the surrounding factors. Interesting. Furthermore, He had no other effective way to be seen than to lash out by taking the life of others. Dear listener, what do you mean they can't be seen? Dylan Mulvaney, who has really done nothing in the world, is the guy. He's a TikToker, for God's sake. He did the 365 days of womanhood, which women all over the world had a serious problem with. Dylan Mulvaney, in 2 months from his TikTok channel, ended up in the fucking Oval Office talking to the most powerful man on the planet. 2 days after this individual, when this girl went up and shot up all those kids, the president and Kamala Harris put out a Trans Day of Visibility. What are you guys talking about? Like, the only way you can be seen. What are you talking about? You're 1% of the population. How the hell did you get an audience with the president of the United States? Interesting. This is the only way it could be seen, is to blow people away. It's a more complex tragedy. We do not claim to know the individual or have access to their inner thoughts and feelings. Really? You just said he had no other effective way to be seen than to lash out. So obviously you're assuming, you're saying that's why she did that. It couldn't be because she's actually full of hate towards Christians. And it couldn't be that she hates Christians for saying we're not going along with this. It could be that, is it possible that trans people can also be very hateful, evil, violent people too? Or it's just Republicans who are hateful, evil, and violent? Interesting. We do know that life for transgender people is very difficult, and made more difficult in the preceding months by a virtual avalanche of anti-trans legislation. La ilaha illallah. There's never a question as to where this anti-trans legislation came from. Dear listener, as I said, I was in Greenwich Village, 14th Street, D-Train, gang shit in New York City, which is Greenwich Village, which is the epicenter of the LGBT community, where Stonewall happened, etc., etc. There were no anti-trans laws when I was there, but there were trans people. There were trans people there. But there were no anti-trans laws 10 years ago, 20 years ago. These people never asked the question, whence came this anti-trans legislation? And furthermore, is it anti-trans legislation to say you can't have chemicals or gender-affirming surgery until you're 18 years old, which is what Tennessee said? That's anti-trans? So is it like anti-tattoo artists because you can't get a tattoo until you're 18? Is it anti-military that you can't join the military until you're 18 years old? Is that like an anti-American, anti-military, anti-freedom idea that you can't join the military until you're 18? I mean, you can sign up at 17. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Is it anti-automobile that a kid can't get a car until he's 16 or whatnot? But this is what I'm talking about. Anytime these people hear no, anytime they hear no, it gets translated into hate. All they said to you was no. They don't hate you. They're not anti-you. They're just saying no. But a lot of white folks in America can't deal with no. Sorry. We know that life for transgender people is very difficult, and made more difficult by the preceding months by a virtual avalanche of anti-trans legislation. This is also I'm not going to say that. We continue. And public call-outs by right-wing personalities and political figures for nothing less than the genocidal eradication of trans people from society. There it is! Genocide! Nobody is calling for trans genocide anywhere. Stop it. Nobody at the popular level is calling for trans genocide. Michael Knowles said he wants to eradicate gender ideology, transgender ideology. And secularists want to eradicate Christian ideology. We're in a war of worldviews, and that is in bounds. I think secularism is toxic and will only lead to millions and millions of deaths. I want the eradication of secularism. It doesn't mean I hate secular people. It just means that I believe that my ideology is the best possible outcome for human flourishing. And the secularists believe the same. And so since we're on opposite teams, he's going to say we need to get rid of my ideology. That doesn't mean we need to get rid of me. Many transgender people deal with anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide, and PTSD from the near constant drumbeat of anti-trans hate, lack of acceptance, and family members in certain religious institutions, denial of our existence, and calls for detransition and forced conversion. Again, it is not hateful to say no. I want to go into this bathroom with a biological woman. No, you hate me. No, it's not. It's not hate. People say, "Well, Vin, I mean, they didn't let you guys into the bathrooms when you were whatever." Now, I'm not even going to get into the comparison between what black people have endured in this country and what trans people supposedly have endured in this country. All I'll say is, I'm on the Farrakhan train. I was not a fan of forced integration. I've said this a million times. I'm not a fan of forced integration. If the white milkshake shop doesn't want to serve you because you're black or makes you go somewhere else or whatever, you and your black friends get together and start your own company. Start your own milkshake shop and then patronize that, because that's going to be 15% of their populace that they're not going to have at that store. And you can let the free market adjust people's morals once they start losing in the pocketbook. That's my perspective on those entire situations. So I'm not the guy to talk to about that stuff. All of these factors contribute to a population that is medically underserved and who often face anti-trans bias. You know who's underserved? You know who's underserved? Black women who keep dying in childbirth. They're underserved. You know who's underserved? Black people who had the highest COVID mortalities per capita. That's who's underserved medically. Who often face anti-trans bias while accessing care, leading to significant physical and mental health disparities. Hate has consequences. What does that mean, gang? Hate has consequences. So you're saying if I don't let you into the school to talk to kids when their parents aren't there, if I don't let you into the bathroom with biological women because they've been traumatized by biological men attacking them, that has consequences? What does that mean, gang? This is not how people who are being genocided talk. This is not how an oppressed minority talks. Not 24 hours after somebody that's identified from your crew has done this fucking atrocity. I agree it's a tragedy that girl ended up dying. I agree, that's a tragedy. And I'm not a fan of all these people posting her dead body and shit and celebrating and spiking the football and all that shit. I'm not a fan of that. That's unmanly, because at the end of the day, that's a girl. A young girl. And I'm sorry, but it hits different for me. And to be honest with you guys, I don't know if I'd have been able to take that person down like that. The way that she fell looks like she got a headshot. That looks like a headshot to me. It was a right play. I think I saw the first officer had a shotty. He was about 7 feet away from her, so it's probably him. I'm not judging him. He probably did the right thing. I just got to tell you, it would be very, very difficult for me to do that to a female. I couldn't do it. I don't know if I could or couldn't do it. It depends on what I saw. It depends on being in the situation. Everybody thinks that they would do something, but taking a life is a fucking crazy burden, man. It's a tough burden. By the way, shout out to the police. They didn't have all the backup they needed. They didn't have all the gear that they needed, and they went in there and did what they were supposed to do. Fucking Uvalde. So shout out to the police for doing what they needed to do in that particular situation. You got to give credit where credit is due. Many transgender people deal with anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide, and PTSD. What do you think black people have been dealing with? How do you think collectively black people felt when Tamir Rice got blown away? No indictment. Philando Castile gets blown away. No indictment. Eric Garner gets choked to death. No indictment. How do you think we feel? How do you think I felt growing up watching Rodney King getting beaten with an inch of his life and them white cops, nothing happened to him? How do you think I felt when Amadou Diallo got hit up 19 times completely unarmed, no indictment from the NYPD. How do you think I felt when Abdul Lawima was literally raped by a plunger by the cops in the NYPD and nothing fucking happened to those cops? You guys are talking about PTSD. Where is the Abner Lawima? Again, these are agents of the state doing this to our folks. I can't send my son to the fucking corner store without being terrified and calling him for every 2 minutes when he's there, and me telling him to come back home. I don't even want my son out there work. That's one of the reasons I've started the business. I don't even want my son out in that fucking culture. How do you think I felt being a black person working in Maine for fucking whatever? You have PTSD. You are justified. Oh, hate has consequences. Really? So this is what I'm talking about. Since we want to be vengeful. We want to be vengeful now. So you're going to say, oh, that's hate has consequences. Okay, so then what would happen if there was a black person's day of vengeance then? Would you say the same thing? If we went up in your little white trans community and blasted you guys to eternity, would you say, well, that's really fucked up, but you know what? Hate has consequences. Look what happened to black people in America. This is nothing but a toxified collection of privileged white males who have been told all their life the world belongs to them. You have PTSD, so everybody has to suffer or else. Holy shit. No, Ben, this is not a big whataboutism. This is you are exposing the fact that you're just a privileged individual if you think that your community is somehow so downtrodden that this kind of behavior can be justified, when every other marginalized group in this country has been through actual systemic oppression. You guys are introducing a bunch of new shit into the world. This shit where you were born a male, but now we got to call you a female, and they, them, z, zim, all this shit. This is all fucking brand new. This idea in America that you could be a dude, a biological male, and walk into a woman's bath, that shit is brand new. These are not inherent rights that is obvious to everybody in the human family. You had women that couldn't use fucking credit cards till the fucking 70s? I didn't even know that. I was like, bullshit. You know how I am. I'm like, bullshit. Holy shit, women couldn't use credit cards in the fucking 70s? That was 50 years ago. This whole thing where, like, you guys are so downtrodden that this now is your high suicidal rates. And listen, is it possible that suicidal ideation is simply a comorbidity of gender dysphoria? Is that possible? And is it possible that when a group of people are under the gun for suicidal ideation, that they can get radicalized and turn that suicidal ideation into homicidal ideation? Is that possible? Oh no, it's everybody else's fault. Okay. Here we go. This is from Canada. This is a .gov from Canada. This blew me away. VR stands for violent radicalization. They were talking about radicalization during the COVID era. Okay? I'll leave the link in the description. You can see right there. It's nih.gov. Okay? Right there. So you guys know how I get down. I never quote anything unless it's actually whatever. Here. Okay, look at this. Listen, Mason, I don't have to make it about race, but I'm black in America. I'm talking about my experiences. I got a group of people now who are claiming that they're the most oppressed of people in the world, and that the way they've been treated is the reason why suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation is so high in their group. And what I'm calling is bullshit. Bullshit. You guys are not anywhere near that. Here we go. This is in line with the results of a recent survey conducted during the pandemic that highlighted high levels of support for violent radicalization as well as psychological distress among gender minorities. Look, transgender and gender diverse youth emerge as a group at the highest risk of support for VR. This is a Canadian outlet. This is a .gov Canadian outlet. Please listen to what I said. Transgender and gender diverse youth emerge as a group at the highest risk of support for VR, violent radicalization. This is in line with results of a recent survey conducted during the pandemic that highlighted high levels of support for VR as well as psychological distress among gender minorities. This is a Canadian report recently. They're violent. There's a violence problem in the trans community. There is. I'm sorry. We've got anecdotal evidence. We've got internet evidence. And we've got this doozy from Amazon.com that they just recently decided is probably not the right thing to do. Trans rights or else. What that mean, gang? What does that mean? Trans rights or else? Or else what? What are you going to do? And what are you defining as rights? Your right to go into my daughter's bathroom? Or your right to go to my friend's school and teach his 5-year-old? What rights are we talking about? So unless we let you into my kid's in my daughter's bathroom, you're gonna load up with an M16, looks like a shotgun here, a Kalashnikov, bolt action sniper, right? Like that was being sold on Amazon. They took it down today or yesterday. Why was that being sold on Amazon, by the way? You know, this Bezos guy, you know, he's an interesting cat. You know, Kyrie gets lambasted for sharing something that was on Jeff Bezos' platform and he never took it down. Dear listener, can you imagine a white rights or else shirt being sold on Amazon like this? Can you imagine? We gonna say this is okay? I just read you the data. The most radicalized group out of the COVID-19 hibernation was transgender youth. Which again, I guarantee you that if that article broke down where the radicalization was coming, it would be male to female trans youth. Because they were born male. They're chemically and socially more apt to commit acts of violence. Men are violent. And that's why when the women are pissed off, they show up with pussy hats and they talk about how they're nasty women. And the most violent they're going to get is they're going to break into an art gallery 113 years ago and take a couple hammers to some pictures. But when men get together and they're angry and they get angry in bunches, property gets destroyed, blood gets shed, and people die. Women don't have this instinct. I'm sorry. Women don't have this instinct. Biological women do not have this instinct. Let's get the guns. They don't have that instinct. Here we go. We got the Trans Day of Vengeance. I mean, we could just go on and on and on and on. Here's the Trans Day of Vengeance. These dudes are strapped up. Sorry, these girls are strapped up. This is not how women are. This is how dudes react when they're upset. And again, you don't see a bunch of black people, you don't see a bunch of black trans people strapping up and doing all this dumb shit on the fucking internet. Because we know what will happen to us. There is a lot of privilege that gets assumed by these folks. Now I want to talk to the Christians here. I'm going to talk to the Christians now. I'm going to talk to the Christians now. Because it's very important that we understand something. There's a lot of Christians here that are upset. They're hurt. They've seen a lot of the crazy shit that these people have put out, and a lot of it, I understand, is surprising to some Christians because they've never been outside of America and seen really real persecution. You know, this conversation where I'm saying you're not oppressed, people just said no to you. I originally had this conversation in spaces with my white Christian friends, where they believe that because the person won't say Merry Christmas to them, that they're being Christophobic. And that's when I show up and say, you can't compel speech. Saying Merry Christmas is happy it brings you happiness, but it doesn't bring them happiness. So, of course, why would you? And secondly, is that something that Christ would want? Would Christ want compelled speech to celebrate his advent from people who obviously hate him? Now, if I were to take that same logical template and say, hey, this is important to you, but you can't compel somebody to refer to you this way, would that work? Let me show you guys something. Thank God, this is this particular person. Holy shit. Alejandra Caraballo. Thank God Tennessee protected the children from the so-called horrors of drag and gender-affirming care so they can be shot up at school by an AR-15 instead. There's been a whole bunch of, this is great, we're happy, they're happy that Christians are dead. And you got a lot of Christians now getting really, really angry and upset and retaliating in kind. And then you've got situations like this. Here's another one with the violent transgender ideology here. And this, by the way, what I'm about to read you is not a person. Please keep in mind, this person is not saying we need to eradicate Christian ideology or anti-trans ideology. That's not what he's saying. Listen very closely to what this teacher just said to people on the internet. I mean, God Almighty, you guys. I'll tell you what. Let me. I gotta read this to you because this will blow your mind. This will absolutely blow your mind when you, or maybe it won't. Maybe you won't. But I'm about to show you guys something, and then I'm gonna explain to you as a Christian how you're supposed to react to it and how you're not supposed to react to it. If I can get this thing to go to my computer. If you tear up the family, then you have kids that grab guns and do this. They're trying to fill a void. They have to return to the father. I agree. There's a clear father issue here. There's a clear issue of dads abandoning their posts. And I know you're probably talking about God the Father, but it's also true in general here anyway. We have a major father issue in this country, and this is not helping. But look at what this guy wrote here. I'm writing this specifically to Christians now. I'm saying this specifically to Christians. So here's what I think of free speech on campus. Although I do not advocate violating federal and state criminal codes, I think it is far more admirable to kill a racist, homophobic, or transphobic speaker than it is to shout them down. Please keep in mind, this is a professor at a college. I'll say it again. I think it is far more admirable to kill a racist, homophobic, or transphobic speaker than it is to shout them down. When right-wing groups invite such speakers to campus, it is precisely because they want to provoke an incident that discredits the left and gives them more publicity and validation to these reprehensible views than they could otherwise attain. Yes, that's the point of free speech. That's the point. I have an ideology, you have an ideology. Let's go with the merits and demerits and argue in the public square. That's the entire point. And again, a phobia is a diagnosable illness. The protesters get blamed instead of the bigoted speaker. Well, they get blamed when they put their hands around the throats of a woman in a rally called Let Women Speak. And then the biological males break down barriers, shout her down, put their hands around their necks, throw shit at them, assault them, etc. Yes, they will get blamed by other people for doing that. Because we were taught in school not to do that shit. We continue. The university administration finds a perfect excuse to side publicly with the racist or the phobes. The national and international press has a field day saying the bigots are the ones being oppressed rather than the people those bigots actually hate being the victims of oppression. Again, this is what, I'm sorry, white people, this is what white people think when they hear no. You think you're being oppressed. No. You're not being oppressed. You're just hearing the word no. That's all that means. You're not being oppressed. Okay, guys, here we go. Listen to what this guy said. This guy is literally saying he is fine with killing people that have after this shooting happened and after our country went through this national trauma, this fucking guy comes on there out in public and says this shit. Now, what kind of mindset do you have to be comfortable enough to say that shit publicly? Again, if these people were truly, truly oppressed, and if genocide was truly happening, to these people, this dude would not have the cojones to go out and say that shit himself. That means he's making certain assumptions about the culture when he puts shit like that out into the ether. He's assuming certain things. And you have to be a white male to make those assumptions. Because everybody else knows that if I did something like that or somebody else did something like that, it's going to go different. Here we go. The exemplary historical figure in this regard is Sholem Schweizbard, who assassinated the anti-Semitic butcher Simon Petalura, rather than trying to shout him down. Remember that Schweizbard was acquitted by a jury which found his action justified. Okay, so there you go. So that's his reasoning. He's saying, yeah, go for it. Go and kill these people. We got a problem. Y'all got a problem in the community. Because here's why. You are 1 to 3% of the population, bruh. Y'all out here doing stuff that is just unwise. Because you don't understand how to operate as a minority. This is not how minorities act. Now, here's what's amazing. The irony. Okay, Simon Petluria, whatever his name is. Okay, he was assassinated by this Jewish person, and I'm gonna show you guys. Who this guy was. Okay, I'm gonna show you who this guy was because it's the irony. The irony is amazing. Petuli, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, and fuck him, I don't really care. Petula is considered a controversial figure connected to the pogroms of Jews. According to Peter Knees, before the advent of Hitler, the greatest mass murder of Jews occurs in blank in the course of the Civil War. All participants in the conflict were guilty of murdering Jews, even the Bolsheviks. However, the volunteer army had the largest number of victims. The number of Jews killed during this period is estimated to be between 50 and 200,000. So that is the group. Petula's roles in pogrom had been a topic of dispute since his assassination in 1926 and the succeeding trial. In the journal, Jewish Social Studies published two opposing views regarding his responsibility in pogroms against Jews during his reign over blank. I'm not going to tell you where he's from. According to Husnak, Petula actively sought to halt anti-Jewish violence on numerous occasions, introducing capital punishment for carrying out pogroms. Conversely, he's also accused of not having done enough to stop the pogroms and being afraid to punish officers and soldiers engaged in crimes against Jews for fear of losing support. Okay, so this guy basically, the argument is, well, he just stood idly by while all these people went and killed all those Jewish people. Now, do you know where this guy came from? Do you know what country? Do you know what country that this dude came from? I'll tell you the country that this dude came from. Okay, so this guy is an anti-Semite that supposedly presided over the deaths of 50 to 200,000 Jews. Where did he come from? He's Ukrainian. I am not kidding you. This dude is Ukrainian. The irony. This dude was Ukrainian. I'll just let that seep into you. But this is why I said, like, the left completely surrendered all of their credibility with this stuff. This just happened in New Zealand at the Posey Parker rally. In response, one of the leaders of the minority far-left party said the real cause of violence in the world is cis white men. No, I'm not laughing at dead Jews. What I'm laughing at is the fact that the left is completely schizophrenic right now relative to how we deal with Nazis. So So this Nazi, according to this professor, it was good that he was assassinated because he oversaw the deaths of 50 to 200,000 Jews. But then the modern Nazis, who also hate Jews and also want to stifle any sort of resistance party and want to nationalize the media, those people deserve 150 billion US dollars in the middle of a US recession. This is how schizophrenic and incoherent leftism is. And this is why we're never going to get Medicare for all, probably for another 10 years. Because we can't be consistent and we can't be logical. So here we go. All right. So I think that the trans community needs to understand that there's a violent male strain of angry trans people who are mad at the world for saying no to them. And if you guys do not correct yourselves the way every other minority group has had to correct themselves when they have radicals. We saw this happen. See, I'm somebody that's from a group. I can help you. But if you're so arrogant, see, here's the thing. You guys want to act like you're part of our struggle, but then you don't listen. Dear listener, as I said, there is a cop, killed a black man. Malcolm X was strapped up. He was ready to go to war. He was ready to kill and die. Elijah Muhammad said, nope, you can't do that, Malcolm. We don't have the numbers. You get bloody with these people, you're going to give them an excuse to kill us all. Malcolm said, yeah, but your rhetoric was any means necessary. And you were quoting Quran about vengeance in matters of the slain. Elijah Muhammad said, I know that. But we also have to be wise, Brother Malcolm, so stand down. And then when John Kennedy got killed, Elijah Muhammad pulled him aside, said, don't say nothing about that white boy. He's very loved by these white folks. And if you say something about him, it's going to bring a bad kind of energy to our movement. We can't have that. Well, Malcolm went out there and said what he said about the hens coming to roost about the death of Mr. Kennedy. Rest in peace. You know what the Nation of Islam did? They suspended Malcolm. They put out a press release that says we had nothing to do with that. We told them not to do that, and that's why we're suspending him. And that was the end of Malcolm and the Nation of Islam. That was wise. See, that's how oppressed people think. That's how people who are facing government and systemic tyranny, that's how they actually think. They have to be strategic, and they have to know when to pull their punches and when not to pull their punches. And they have to self-critique. Because they understand that they're not in an advantageous position. So you function that way when you're under actual oppression. And I would commend that to you. You guys need to hold yourself accountable. This whole thing with the obsession of going around kids, and now you are putting your hands on women. You're putting your hands on women. How much longer do you think that's going to go? And again, all I've ever asked from the trans community was marginalize these motherfuckers. These people that want to be around kids, marginalize them. Come out and fucking disassociate the rest of the movement from those people. Say these people are freaks. You know how you could have disavowed Libs of TikTok? You could have easily ended Libs of TikTok in 2 weeks. You know how? By you posting that shit. You post that and say, look at these fucking people. Fuck these people. They're not in our crew. That would have completely took the steam right out of Libs of TikTok, but you would have had to disavow those people. But when you won't disavow those people, it makes people think, oh, so you guys are like pro pedophilia? Now you got people putting their hands around this woman's throat. One little white lady surrounded by 50 screaming dudes. Hands around the throat. I think there was a box cutter by her as well. She's got to get escorted out. And the name of the conference is Let Women Speak. You really think that women in this country, or women in New Zealand and women in Australia, you think that they're watching that at a Let Women Speak rally? A bunch of men coming around and bullying a woman and shutting her up and chasing her off and throwing shit at her and putting their hands around her throat. You think women around the world are looking at that and going, yeah, that's a movement we need to be a part of. That's a movement that's safe for us. That's a movement that's going to advance feminism. I gotta tell you, after the shooting, I'm looking at the comment section, and all I'm hearing from trans people, oh, this is going to be so bad for us. I saw the ridiculous poster on Twitter talking about how CNN misgendered this person all these times. They misgendered her a bunch of times. You guys are coming off as the most violent, egomaniacal, narcissistic people on the face of the planet. Parents are about to bury their children, and all I'm seeing you talk about is how it's affecting you and your depression. It's not a good look, man. It's not a good look. And I don't have this channel for subscribers. I have this channel because I care about what's happening in the world. And I believe now that information to a degree or platforms have been democratized. So now everybody has the opportunity to say something. I believe collectively we can make a very important change. But I'm sorry, I'm not seeing any of my trans friends coming out and decrying this bullshit. And I have Christian children. So just like as a black person, when I see Tamir Rice get gunned down and my white friends are like, oh, man, I'm like, damn. So if that was my kid, that's the reaction you give. Noted. It's the same thing. I got Christian kids. And when I see my trans friends and all they care about is how the shit's going to happen to them, how it's going to affect them and their community. And all they care about is, why did you mention that the shooter was trans? As if that's not relevant. I got to tell you, it makes me go, okay, so if that was my kids, that'd be the same react. They wouldn't give a fuck, man. It's just about them. The whole thing's about you all the time. That's not a good look. That makes it very hard to advocate for people like that. That degree of selfishness and narcissism. You know, if a Christian went in and shot up a bunch of trans people, I'd have put that up there. Everybody knows I'd have put that up there because everybody knows I've been critical of Christianity relative to LGBT people. You know what's interesting, though? Every single time I've gone after my own people for their treatment of trans people, I've never had a trans person say, well, why did you mention that they were Christian? Never had them say it once. You know what would happen if a Christian went up, somebody from that's a representative of my community, if a Christian went up and shot and killed a bunch of trans kids? You know what I'd have posted? The first thing I'd have done, I'd have posted on Facebook that we did this, and I'd have said blah, 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 something about Jesus. And then I'd have messaged all my trans friends and said, how are you doing? I'd have checked up on them. Because I'd have been like, damn, that's a representative from my community that did that to my friends from that community. And that could have easily been them. Or that could have easily been their friend or their boyfriend or their girlfriend. Let me reach out to them and see how they're doing. I wouldn't be interested in defending Christians and Christianity. I'd be worried about my trans friend. Not a single one of y'all, not a fucking single one of y'all has ever reached out and said, how are you doing with this? You're a Christian. This person targeted Christian children. How are you doing? Are you okay? Do you do you now have a category of other things to worry about when you send your child to fucking CVS or whatever it is across the street? Not a single one of y'all, not a single one of my trans friends has reached out to me and asked me how I'm doing with that. So this has not been a good look, man. Between the Anna Kasparian situation, what happened to this woman in New Zealand, the shooting and then your response. And here's the thing. The responses from the community are always, always worse than the action itself. I'll say this again. The response from the community is always worse than the action itself. Because when you get people saying things like, well, hate has consequences, and all the rest of it, not 24 hours after those kids have been identified, it makes people go, oh, that's where they're at. Okay. But if you are a Christian, you cannot have hate in your heart for these people. Obviously, this group of folks, and I'm not talking about all trans people, I'm talking about the people that we talked about, the justifiers, the spoiled white people, that type of thing. I'm not talking about every trans person, because I know some real solid, down-to-earth trans people who are just trying to fucking live, man. They're just trying to live. And it sucks to me that they're now the minority and they're getting drowned out by these fucking psychopaths. But if you're a Christian, you got to guard your heart like mad, especially now. I'm not even going to mention half the shit that these people are saying celebrating the death of Christian children. Yeah, these people hate you, bro. They have real hate in their heart for you. And the scripture tells us that that's how it's supposed to go. The hate and the murder and the killing is only supposed to go one way. We are not supposed to retaliate. We are not supposed to retaliate physically or rhetorically. We are not supposed to promote violence against people that harm us, even harm our children. We're not supposed to do that. Our role is to be hated, but to tell the truth and speak the truth in love. I can tell that's one of the reasons I held off on talking. Do not speak unless you can speak with the belief that this is not coming from a place of hatred. I've been saying the same thing to trans people over and over again. I've been dropping game as to how you guys can actually get somewhere without this shit turning against you. Whether or not my trans friends receive what I've been saying for the last hour and a half as an exercise of love is irrelevant to me. As long as I know that that's what my motive was, and God knows that's what my motive was, I'm good. I'm not beholden to the interpretations and the assumptions of other people. But you know what's in your heart when you're posting that shit on Twitter. You know what's in your heart when you make those statements. You know what's in your heart. So don't argue with me. You know what's in your heart. What I'm telling you is, if that shit is in your heart, you need to pray and ventilate to people who can hear you before you go out in public and put out more fire or gasoline onto an already volatile situation. I am not saying don't say anything that hurts people's feelings. I'm sure there's a bunch of people crying right now feeling sorry for themselves based on the things that I've said. So I'm not saying don't hurt people. Sometimes a surgeon wounds in order to heal. What I'm talking about is what we all know. Is there hate in your heart for these people? Did you have hate in your heart for these people long before, and then this weekend gave you the opportunity to justify and ventilate your hate? I don't believe that a lot of you are transphobic. I think a lot of you hate trans people. And I believe that you hated those trans people before they started this little thing about going, being around kids and all this other shit. I believe that doing that gave you the opportunity to hate them even more. And as I said, and I will continue to say, and you know what? I've been wrong before. I could be wrong. I do not believe, because this has been my experience, because I lived with these people, I do not believe that the vast majority of trans people want to be around children. I don't believe that. I don't believe the vast majority of LGBTQ people want to be around children. Matter of fact, in my view, all I've observed is resentment toward children and resentment toward us breeders. I don't know what the terminology is now, but when I was around, they would, oh, here come the breeders, blah blah blah. That's what they call it. So what the fuck are you talking about? And then they would explain, like, you guys spread your all over the world, whatever. If you are a Christian, you are supposed to be persecuted. And as I've said, Christians in this country, look, I had the Attorney General come after me and my friends to try to stop us from speaking to defend life. We almost went to the fucking Supreme Court. I had Christians literally all over the world calling us, emailing us to give us support, and, you know, you guys are being persecuted, blah, blah, blah. Stop it. We had dudes strapped up and shit. Dudes are strapped up. Dudes are starting to come into church with guns and shit because we were getting all these death threats and all the rest of it from the very tolerant people on the left. I said, Brian, these people kill children every day for a living. Why are you surprised that they want to kill you now? Or they want to kill me? This is what they've been doing the entire time. You better not, as a representative of Jesus Christ, go and kill somebody if they want to hurt you. That's not our role in society. But see, Christians in America are not used to actual persecution. Our Christian brothers and sisters in Muslim countries understand that. They understand that. It may be time now for Christians to actually, in America, to put their money where their mouth is. This was an act of hate, obviously. And the responses have been hateful. They hate Christians. And they're happy it was a bunch of white Christian kids that got mowed down. Because that way they can give a full-throated celebration. If it was black Christian kids that got mowed down, they would have to edit themselves a little bit. A little bit. So you just have to understand, it may be that we're going to enter into a space of actual persecution that our brothers and sisters have had to face all through time and all over the world. And if that's the case, then we need to act like Christian men and Christian women. We need to sack up and take the persecution like we were told to. What I'm afraid of, though, is that American Christians believe that they're the exception to the rule. I had a rapper one time. He said, we've outsmarted the martyrs. Oh, all those people over there, they're supposed to die, not us. All those people back then, they're supposed to die for their faith, not us. Okay, well, now it's time. Maybe it's time now. Maybe this is going to unleash some sort of giant war where they come after you and your kids. You got to decide in your heart if you're going to handle this like Christ would, or you're going to handle this like an American would. Because sometimes God calls bullshit on our bullshit. You really about Christ? You know, we got all these conferences, Voice of the Martyrs, all types of shit. I've literally held Chinese Christians in my arms as they cried and recounted the horrors that the atheist regime over there did to them. We hold conferences of Voice of the Martyrs, but we don't want any parts. We don't want any parts of martyrdom. We don't want any parts of martyrdom. And we certainly don't want any parts of our children being martyred. You know, somebody tried to steal my daughter's bike, and Dorian took back the bike and then fought honorably. And this kid in the spin cycle, he jiu-jitsu'd him in 3 seconds. Shout out to Dorian. And the kid took up a stick and began to wail on my son because he lost, because he couldn't handle a loss like a man. So I get this phone call and I get this picture of my son's back. I lost my I went ballistic. So I went out there looking for these people. I saw this big 6'5" dude. I said, excellent. Because I'm short. I'm like 5'3". I'm like, excellent. So I beat the shit out of this kid within an inch of his life. Nobody's going to call me a bully. So I went up and confronted this kid. I was literally out of my mind. I was saying all types of shit. Then I looked at his friends. I said, you guys are pussy too. I'm out here in your man's face and yelling, doing all of you guys are pussy, blah, blah, blah. And everybody there was like, yo, this guy had nothing to do with it. He had nothing to do. I went ballistic. As I was driving away, I was just, my son was like, Father, relax. You need to relax. You need to get it you need to get it together. And I just looked at my son's back, and it just looked horrible. And I was so angry. And in that moment, God said to me, "You don't want your son to carry the wounds of Christ, huh?" And I was like, because here I am as a Christian. And what I'm saying is that God saved the world by allowing his child to be massacred. Now here's my son. He wasn't massacred, he wasn't crucified, but his back was torn to shreds. And I wanted some real vengeance for that. God said, "You don't want your son to carry the wounds of Christ." And I said, "You're right, I don't. Hell no." And if I'd... So my point is, that's the call, guys. I was wrong to do that. And I thank God that I had taught my son a little bit of Christianity for him to be able to call me out in the midst of my crazy. A lot of you guys, I'm just trying to tell you, a lot of you people that do not have children, you cannot, I know you're an aunt, you're an uncle, whatever, I get it. You cannot understand how maniacal parents are when their children are in danger or when their children are hurt. You have no idea what that's like. You guys have no idea what you're playing around with when you go after children. You don't get it. What I'm saying to you as a Christian, though, is our brothers and sisters throughout history have died in the millions for this shit. And we are not an exception. So it may be that God is finally calling bullshit on American Christians and saying, "Hey, take your place." And if you can't you can't post on your Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, you can't even practice some rhetorical pacifism on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, I don't know what the fuck you guys think it means. It says, "Take up your cross and follow me." People who take up crosses end up dead. I don't really understand that. And then they die in pretty terrible fashion. So I'm appealing to Christians, not for the sake of trans people. I'm just appealing to you for the sake of Jesus Christ. For Christ's sake. I can't appeal to you for the sake of trans people because right now they're not very easy people to love. I'm just being honest with you. Y'all's reaction has been horrible. Some of you guys I thought were my friends, you're so caught up in yourself that you didn't even think about how this affects Christian people that have Christian children. So I know how you feel. But we are not called to take vengeance. The scripture said, "It's mine to avenge, I will repay," says the Lord. So if you're at the base instinct of your heart where you want vengeance like me, then that's there for you. But the ultimate goal shouldn't even be that you want God's vengeance on the trans community. I hope you understand that Christ died for trans people. I hope you understand that Christ died for pedophiles. I hope you understand that Christ died for child murderers. I hope you understand that. And I also hope you understand that if it was not for the grace of God, you would be that. You know, Paul asked the Corinthians, he says, "What do you have that you were not given? And if you were given it, why do you boast about it as if you've earned it?" So if you think that trans people are all crazy, mentally ill, demonized people, okay, fine. Then you need to thank God that he gave you a sound mind and didn't allow you to be demonized by the trans spirit then. I hope you don't think you're better than them. I hope you realize that aside from God's restraining and gracious hand, you'd go up in a school and shoot up a bunch of people just like those people would. I hope you're not making the mistake of Brother Minister Farrakhan and saying that there are certain groups of people that are just worse than other groups of people. Might be time for us to die. It might be time for us to die. And you got to make peace with that. It might be God calling us on our bullshit. Might be God calling us on our bullshit now and saying, okay, let's see how serious you take this Christianity shit, mega church American. Now listen, I've also held Americans in my arms who left this country and went into very dangerous places to bring the message. So I'm not going to diss American Christianity. Some of these American churches have produced some of the most amazing human beings on the face of the earth. Kayla Mueller was over there on a mission trip, and she ended her life getting raped by Baghdadi and then executed. But that's the call. That's what we're supposed to do. I'm not going to lie, though. I've been pretty hurt by the trans community and their response to this massacre of my folks. I identify more as a Christian than I do as a man or as a black person. Those are my folks. They were just gunned down. And for the most part, your community has either celebrated their deaths or found a way to make their deaths another issue for you to feel sorry for yourself about. And I got to tell you, I'm going to have a hard time dealing with that internally. But I still think I can say honestly that if anybody ever came after my trans friends with a loaded weapon, I would stand in between them. I think I can say that with an honest and full heart. I would. But don't get it twisted. Your reaction to this makes me understand what real friendship is about. And that's a tough thing to swallow when you've invested a lot of energy and time into people. For them to be so caught up in their own shit that they can't say, hey, those are your folks. You've identified as those folks. How are you doing? How are you feeling? That's tough. That's tough. That is tough. I'm not going to lie about that. It's the same feeling I felt in church when Tamira got killed and Philando got killed. The same lackadaisical attitude, the same dismissive attitude. And I'm like, hello, do you not see? I'm here. It's the exact same emotion. All right. Where I'm at is pretty much the LGBT campaign that I got in the 90s, which was, what does two consenting adults do in their bedroom have to do with you? That's my stance on LGBTQ whatever. What do two consenting adults have to do with you? As long as it's about two consenting adults, I'm in your corner 110%. Anything outside of that, I'm against. And I'm also against telling women that they don't have any self-determination. If you're talking about killing another human being, this is a universal principle. Pro-choicers are simply inconsistent with their ideology. I've demonstrated that over and over again. When you talk about autonomy, you're talking about self-determination and the ability to govern things for yourself. Biological women, to me it appears, do not want to share certain intimate spaces with biological men. They should be allowed to ventilate that. They should be allowed to put that on the ballot, and they should be allowed to be heard. They should be allowed to be heard. That's where I'm at. Relative to the LGBTQIA, whatever, it's two consenting adults. It's y'all's business. I'm with that. Relative to women, I think they need to decide about these topics that are going to directly affect them. And relative to children, please leave them alone. Please stop trying to go into spaces around children when their parents are not there. especially if you don't have any kids yourself. It's self-destructive, and you have no idea what you're doing. If you're a Christian, please consider pausing before you hit send, reorienting yourself, put that shit up as a draft, pray for a little bit for 5 minutes, say, God, is this crazy? Think before you post, because one of the things that is clear from COVID is that a lot of people got radicalized because they were inside, they were cut off from actual human beings, and they ended up in these crazy echo chambers that then radicalized them. These trans people, a lot of these people who are doing the killing and talking about genocide, there is no genocide happening. But because they're talking to each other, they're affirming their own assumptions about what's happening, and then they're self-radicalizing. We can see it happening with white right-wingers. That's what's happening to a lot of these trans folks right now. And when you go on the internet and say, ha, and you're celebrating the death of this trans girl and you're putting her body up all on the screen or whatever, it validates that narrative. And it's dangerous, and it's un-Christ-like. So please consider before you post. If I can't motivate you to consider the feelings of the trans people that you may hurt, at least consider that you could be fomenting the next active shooter event at a Christian school. Since I can't tell you to just care for this trans neighbor just by itself, if you post something inflammatory that's motivated by hate and just by and I understand the feeling, I understand the hurt, because I got kids, man. Every child that has died in an active shooter situation has had the benefit of universal national sympathy. This is the first time I've seen people actively in an active shooter situation celebrating the death of children. I know that fucking hurts. I know how much that hurts, dude. But if I can't motivate you with Christ's forgiveness, if I can't motivate you with the fact that if you were around during Christ's time outside the grace of God, you would have nailed him to the tree. So we can't hold that hate for long. If I can't motivate you with that, I can at least say on a practical level, it is going to create another active shooter situation, because these people and the architects of their movements want to convince themselves that they're being genocided so that they can justify all the shit that they're doing. So at that level, can you at least think before you post? Okay. All right. Much love to all you beautiful people. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. And, look, if you're in the trans community, try to think about how people outside of your community are looking at these actions, looking at these responses. If I can't motivate you for just plain pity for another human being and empathy for human beings outside of your little very, very small circle, I can tell you that if you post shit celebrating the death of children, you are not gaining any friends to your movement. And if you post shit where children, you guys are already coming off looking like you have a very strange interest in children in the first place, and now children are being killed, and some of the justification is because you won't let us into schools to talk about children without your parents. I'm just telling you how it looks. So if I can't motivate you not to spike the football, the death of Christian children, then I can at least motivate you by self-interest and tell you that if you do that shit, you're accelerating get back from 99% of the population. So I think that's unwise to do. I think that's unwise. Get the help that you need, everybody. There's nothing wrong with saying that you have a mental health issue. There's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with saying that you need help. If you need help, get help. If you have suicidal ideation, get help. If you have homicidal ideation, get help. Get a counselor, get a therapist, get some meds, get your chemicals straightened out, get some help. Lord Jesus, we are in trouble. I got Christians that hate these people. And we got trans people that hate us. You are the only hope that I see in this world. Please forgive all my friends. Give everybody peace. God, I pray that you would take out the spirit of vengeance, the spirit of anger, our pride, our narcissism. And God, I still believe that tomorrow you can bring a revival to this country where we love each other again and see each other's humanity. I do think one day you're going to make it so we turn our swords into plowshares, God. I believe that with perfect faith. I love you all. I got to get out of here. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America.